The main character has a talent, which consists in the fact that he can eat everything, in any quantity, and also adopt the features of what he ate. He did various things to fulfill himself, and eventually became a poacher in Africa. In this case, he has a partner named Hispanic. They receive an order from a certain lightning general. The task is to extract the heads and hands of gorillas. The next day they go hunting, and the main character notices a large number of soldiers in the forest, which is why they have to hide in the bushes. Confused by the fact that the forest has begun to thin out, he asks his partner about the direction in which they are moving. After the hopeful answer from the Hispanic that he knows where to go, people with weapons and in special uniforms appear out of the forest at lightning speed, thereby surrounding these two. As it turned out, all this was planned. It was an ambush to catch the main character. His partner turned out to be a member who worked for a special international police agency, and his real name is Eddie Montoya. They call him Pet Shop because he spent all the money he earned on buying the rarest animals, after which he devoured them all. The caught criminal is detained on charges of these and other crimes, handcuffed, and then put in a car and driven to an unknown destination. Suddenly, someone called Eddie, saying that there were 2 moons in the sky. This not only shocked him, but also angered him. Completely incomprehensible things began to happen to the car. It began to shake, after which Mr. Kim uses his ability to transform, and then kills everyone in the car. As soon as he destroyed the paddy wagon, he went outside and was able to make sure that there were really 2 moons in the night sky, which means that this is not the Earth, but something completely different. Suddenly, a pack of wolves ran out of the forest and attacked the main character, who had already turned into a tiger. After learning that it was not possible to bite through the skin of a wolf, he decided to change the appearance of a tiger to a hippopotamus and teeth to a shark, thereby killing and eating the attackers. After a week, during which Kim managed to hunt various animals, a bear with disproportionately large front paws, a snake, either poisonous or harmless, a deer with horns sharp as an awl, he went further to explore the area. I met a guy who immediately died, impaled on the horns of a deer running past. The ability of the protagonist allows you to take the form of the victim's brain and gain access to her memories. Thus, thanks to this murdered man, he mastered the local language. I found a monster handbook with which I could find out about the inhabitants of this place. 2 months later, Pet Shop is engaged in various research and experiments on animals. The Great Forest of the North. The main character goes to the trolls for further use in the experiment. After hitting one of them, in order to stop the troll's rapid regeneration, it makes a venomous bite, paralyzing that one. During the experiments, he learns that skills really exist. Skills do not work against those who possess them, and damage unrelated to the use of abilities can be inflicted on any organism. Kim is immune to skills as he is an earthling, and for others his attacks are deadly. Since childhood, he wanted to be the strongest, and in such a place there is an opportunity to do it. A certain character appears in front of us, saying that he has been reborn into a slime that can eat everything in a row, getting satiated, but at the same time spending his soul. He was chosen by the goddess of this island, Elmud Island, as a consumable. Then a warrior chosen by the goddess appears, who follows moral precepts and protects people. The more danger humanity is exposed to, the stronger the warrior becomes thanks to the grace of the goddess. He tells about a terrible monster that brought disaster to the whole world, from whose power he died. Opening his eyes again, the warrior realized that he had returned 10 years ago. The goddess has given him one last chance, and now he must stop the monster. After talking with the elder, the warrior learned about the frequent disappearance of trolls recently. He went to their habitat to catch the monster. Meanwhile, the main character goes to the swamps of the Great Forest for the lizardmen, for their further absorption. We return to the warrior who met Slime on his way. He mistook him for a monster, his target. After attacking Slime, the warrior leaves, and Slime crawls into the cave to regenerate. The author tells about Slime's past life. Previously, he was a man who was considered trash by others, lived according to his instincts, did not strain himself, did not listen to his parents, who later turned away from him because he got fat, and by the age of 40 he never found a job. And so it turned out that somehow he ended up here, and even in the body of the strongest slime, in his opinion. According to him, he realized that he was the chosen owner of this place, despite his shabby appearance, which he received because of the pet shop. At this moment, a pet shop comes to the cave, and a slime jumps into his mouth in order to devour him from the inside. Then it turns out to be inside the main character and digested. Kim recalls and lists the events that have happened over the past 2 weeks, starting with the bad ones, Firstly, now his laboratory is good for nothing, and secondly, while he was hunting lizardmen, some slime splattered everything here. Now he tells us about the good. After he was attacked by a slime, jumped into it and digested in his stomach, he acquired new skills that turned out to be very interesting and useful. For example, the ability to devour metals and adopt their shape. Now we are transported to the dragon lands in the great forests. A dragoness without a name lives there, since lonely and proud dragons do not need it. But she has a nickname from her admirers, the scarlet spark dancing in the sky, and her cub, whom she jealously protects. The lizards of this forest worship her. Because of their regular offerings in the form of treasures, they are safe. But with all this, her attentiveness weakened after the birth of the child. She decides to fly and check the situation around, not feeling any danger and not hoping for something unusual. During the flight, she will notice traces of the battle, realizing that someone has invaded her territory. This situation awakens her anger and an unquenchable sense of revenge. Pet Shop at this time is studying the fact that the body of lizardmen is covered with dense scales, which is covered with mucus, which plays the role of an antiseptic and an antibiotic. He mentions that this very slime has an oat orientation, whereas slime is a combination of several. Thus, we find out that if the main character absorbs metal and transforms the slime into a metal slime, then he will definitely become stronger. A problem appears before him, which is the question of finding pure iron. He decides to use the eyes of the falcon, after which he notices a target on the mountain opposite, which will be difficult to reach, since this place is the territory of the orcs. At the same moment, a dragon flies right over his head, and he comes up with a plan that will be implemented a little later. Pet Shop studies the characteristics of orcs in the Monster Handbook, learning that they are evil creatures that value honor and pride, as well as these are creatures that are classified as monsters. We move to the dragon's lair, a cave in which not only the mother, but also her cub is located. Since she was going to fly away, she forced the baby to stay inside and not go out. 30 minutes earlier, Kim was tracking down the dragon's habitat at the expense of the lizardman's brain. It turned out to be easier than he had implied. On the way, he meets a magical barrier that he had already seen earlier in his memories, but it does not work against an earthman, so Kim calmly passes through it. The main character climbs the mountain into the dragon's lair itself, while having an appearance consisting of troll fangs, scales of a fatal bite, and body parts of several other terrestrial creatures. He created such an appearance in order to fool the dragon child. The kid tries to drive the pet shop away, but it turns out to be in vain. The main character notices and takes with him riches, next to which there were not even minerals extracted in mines. A week later, we return to the dragoness, who never found out anything, after 7 whole days. Upon returning to her house, she notices a suspicious oddity: the child does not meet her. The baby turned out to be lying unconscious on the side. Waking up, the child tells about the invasion of their house by a creature with big teeth and red skin. The main character's plan worked. The dragon mistook him for an orc. The baby's mother becomes enraged and goes to the orcs to brutally, fully and with all cruelty avenge her child. One of the orcs summoned, with the sound of a horn, all the others from the great forest. The battle began, lasting 4 days and 4 nights. As a result, the victory was won by the orcs, while they suffered far from small losses. About 12 survived. They left the great forest after the battle, thereby leaving the main character a delicious dinner consisting of a huge number of orcs, as well as a large and powerful dragon. The baby dragon ceases to feel a connection with her, which is why she cries bitterly and acquires a new strength, after which she spreads her wings and heads in a direction that is not yet known to us. Our attention is again focused on the main character, who in turn remembers everyone he ate during his stay in this mysterious place. He lists such creatures as hard wolf, troll, lizardman, orc, dragon, and many other monsters. Now he has managed to try everyone from the Monster Handbook, so there is nothing more to do here. He meets a merchant with a horse-drawn cart and says that he has lost his memory. Oddly enough, the stranger tells that such a phenomenon is quite common, since this place is quite dangerous. The man continues to talk about this territory, herbs that will bring back youth, lairs of rare monsters, treasures of ancient kingdoms. There are so many jewels here that even one of them can change your life, which is why greedy people are so eager to get into the great forests. Basically, they all die, or they suffer the same fate as the main character, if they are lucky, of course. The merchant anxiously asks Kim to be careful, which he agrees to. Another pet shop plan was the pretense that we have just observed. He lied about his memory loss during the accident and headed to the city with the merchant who told him the local rules. Thanks to this, he learned almost everything except one. The status window, it allows you to find out the position of a person, but for some reason he can't use it. Assuming that the reason lies in the fact that he is not from this world, he continued on his way. Once in a city called Santo Canargo, I was surprised, as it turned out to be huge. Kim noticed that it was much cleaner here than he thought. He caught sight of a recommendation written on a piece of paper that was attached to the wall of one of the buildings. It read, "In order to avoid infectious diseases, follow the rules of personal hand hygiene." After reading this information, he thought about how much civilization is developed here. Locals passed by him, discussing quite interesting things. They talked about the fact that only the royal capital is so clean, and all this is thanks to the second prince, because he was the first to guess that diseases are primarily related to hygiene. At the age of 10 he was already very gifted. It was also mentioned that the second prince is due to visit this city next month in honor of coming of age, and they would like to see him. The main character reminds us that on Earth the concept of hygiene was widely spread only in the 20th century. And here it is the Middle Ages. And how did a little boy even guess about this? The guy suggested the possibility of someone else besides him, preserving memories of the Earth. Some time later, he happened to meet the second prince. What was the prince's surprise, after all, when it turned out that the man he had ambushed in the forest was standing in front of him, before he got to an unknown island. Eddie Montoya is a member of the an investigator of the police agency. Eddie Montoya appears before us. His life was absolutely luxurious until he met the monster who interrupted it. And it would seem that this is the end. But as soon as a man opens his eyes, he realizes that he is in the body of a child who was given a completely different name, Edward. He was the second prince in Grand Contin. A few years later, in the residence of Santo Canargo, Edward is lying on the bed, but then he notices a clearly not human face in the window. After a couple of seconds, a lizardman appears, who is interested in whether the prince recognizes him, which is why the latter faints. A servant enters the room. The boy is lying on the floor, and there is a stuffed bear next to him, under which Kim disguised himself. That's just the servant turns out to be not so conscientious. After making sure that Edward is out, the man pulls a knife from his bosom, intending to strike, but he is stopped in time by a bear paw, which scares the servant. At the shout and noise, the knights run together, who decide to kill both. The bear makes the right decision. He runs with the prince through the window, leaving the latter alive. Soon the incident is reported to the baron, who instantly raises the entire army and gives the order to return the heir to the throne. They manage to talk. Both can't understand who by some miracle turned out to be here. Eddie offers Kim a joint job. He agrees. After that, the prince tells them to come back so they can get more information and celebrate his coming of age. The army commander decides to support the conspiracy to lure the boy into the circle of people and kill him. But things get more complicated when he and the baron are informed that the prince has already been found and has come himself. On the threshold, Edward appears with a knight, Sir Kim, who protected him from people who wanted to make an attempt on him. The prince, with his menacing speech, accuses the commander of treason. The baron needs a couple of seconds to think about the prince's behavior. Notice the fusion of mystium and dragon scales on Kim before he makes a decision to capture the traitors to power. During the conversation between the pet shop and the baron, the man says that these people confessed during the torture, giving out the name of their organization, Messengers of Death. The prince had already told him where the mercenaries' tracks led, so they would figure it out for themselves. After that, they go together with the guy in the carriage. A conversation ensues between them. He promises him that he will help him meet even the leader of the Messengers of Death in the kingdom. Kim himself is more interested in the status window, which he cannot use, but nothing happens on the first attempt. After that, Eddie asks him to turn his palm into someone else's. As soon as the hand begins to change and take a variety of forms, the status window appears and begins to be filled with a variety of criteria. That's just in the name, race and level section there was only one word, null or no. A few days later they arrive in the kingdom, and when they reach the big doors, it is behind them that the leader of the mercenaries is. There's a king sitting on the throne. When Eddie swears allegiance to the king, it is noticeable that a spark of tension appears between them. The man asks his son if he would mind giving him Sir Kim, to which, of course, he is refused. Edward says that the pet shop is his best friend, and not some kind of thing. Therefore he cannot dispose of it as his property. Eddie thanks him for his recent pretense. A girl with blonde hair suddenly bursts into the prince's private chambers, but a pet shop blocks her way. A small skirmish ensues. Eleanor is his sister. At first, the guy behaves very friendly with her, but as soon as the blonde leaves, the mask immediately flies off Edward's face. The guy calls her a brainless fool who was lucky to inherit a gift from the goddess, and as soon as he ascends the throne, he will immediately get rid of her. They decide to go ahead with the plan. The prince offers to entice his father's wards, but at the moment of his speech, someone bumps into him. My brother appears in front of my face. The king is thinking. He thinks about his children. The eldest is fair, but was chosen by the goddess as a warrior, which is why he left the kingdom. An intelligent and beautiful daughter can be used for a profitable political marriage, but the second son, who looks like the king himself, was drugged by blood feud. The warrior asks for an audience, and the pet shop notices that the guy who received the blessing of the goddess is the purest and fairest, and can also interfere with his own plan. The subsequent action takes place in the audience hall. It is important to note that everyone addresses the king's eldest son as a warrior, where the king is favored to listen to important information. Without any emotion, the warrior informs him that yesterday he received from the goddess the power of holy radiance, and the Christian state will send him the Holy Virgin so that within a week he will go on an expedition. The main reason for his visit turns out to be a request for military reinforcements. The king agrees without hesitation. Already in his chambers, Eddie loses his temper. His plan would have been put into action if not for the unexpected appearance of the Demon King. Pet Shop is puzzled, so the prince decides to tell him how this world works. There is a race of demons and they also have a representative, the Demon King. Thanks to the balance of the goddess, a balance is maintained between people and evil spirits, even though they are at enmity. But if something outweighs the cup, the goddess calls the warrior to one of the sides, granting him the power of holy radiance, with which you can cut down the king of a hostile race, and not incur any punishment. And a demon, it seems, should also receive something similar, but power is granted only to a warrior. After the condescension of this very force, the kingdom will find itself in a very difficult situation. And since Eddie is a member of the royal family, he will have to protect people at the cost of his life, which, of course, was not part of his plans. After that, he and the pet shop are sitting in the carriage and begin to notice that their guards on horses are somehow approaching strangely. They are trying to make an attempt, but the attack was successfully repelled. Kim sticks out from under the wreckage of the carriage in the guise of a red dragon. Going out into the clearing together, they come face to face with a military company, who were clearly shocked by the sight of the monster themselves. But at the same moment, the dragon raises its mouth to the top, starting to scream, which is why the horses on which the riders were sitting are under the curse of mind mastery. The squad leader simply gives up, deciding to attack the dragon, pulling the sword out of the scabbard. Unfortunately, a powerful volley of fire from someone else's mouth turns a man into burnt ashes. People are unable to resist him, that's why they rush to run. After a while they are in the village, deciding to have dinner. A conversation ensues. Kim decides to raise the topic of the power of holy radiance again. Eddie assures him that it is quite possible to kill a warrior, and since the goddess is just, she absolves both sides of responsibility thanks to this very radiance. But since no one had ever killed a warrior before, if the demons had won at least once, the era of humanity would have come to an end. Eddie involuntarily mentioned the Holy Virgin, who turns out to be behind him at such a bad time. A verbal altercation ensues between the prince and the girl, but it all boils down to the fact that they decide to go outside and sort it out like a man. Since everyone in the tavern is alarmed because of this, the brown-haired man has to order everyone to shut up and not remember this situation in any way before he throws a handful of gold coins and goes outside. Then we are told about the Holy Virgin, a warrior created by man and the church for many years. And since it's too expensive, she's only one. She has colossal power, a metallized skeleton, incredible musculature and superhuman abilities in her arsenal. Kim finds them by the time they're both exhausted. He informs them that it's time to stop all this childishness, as the warrior will soon appear, and the virgin reluctantly refers to her affairs. As soon as the girl leaves, the knight grabs the prince by the throat, warning that he has not been hired as a nanny. The warrior is presented to us again. He welcomes everyone. The elder brother tells that the goddess has not yet withdrawn the radiance, and the current demon king is one of the strongest, which means that the warrior cannot guarantee their complete safety. But despite this, the prince and the Holy Virgin agree, as does the knight. The demon king extermination squad has been formed, but their fighting spirit is interrupted by a hail from the bell tower. Turning around, the warrior recognizes him, the general of the 7th Army of Demons, nicknamed Arrogance, Francis de Flylord, who mocks the heroes, telling them that they challenged the enemy while on foreign territory. It doesn't reach the warrior the first time. That's why the demon strikes the bell, and the crowded people turn from ordinary people into werewolves. A fight began when Francis began to make notes about everyone. The prince uses a sword and a shield of light, deftly dodging during the fight. The whole body of the Holy Virgin is wrapped in magic, and her fighting style is simply monstrous. The warrior is just an orthodox fighter. As soon as everything was written down in the notebook, the general notices the absence of the fourth person. And just at this moment, a shadow appears behind him, the weapon of which has already been pointed at his head. We are transported to the lair of demons. The other generals discuss and ridicule the death of their comrade, because he was just an ordinary pawn in order to hide the identity of the heavenly king of the four sides and find out the abilities of the heroes. The demons say that the end of humanity is a foregone conclusion, since they managed to break the chains of the goddess. All the werewolves were defeated. As expected, the warrior admits that the general's face is familiar to him. Eddie notices that for such a high rank, arrogance was given a very weak army, as if they wanted to get rid of it in this way. Kim and the prince begin to talk about the fact that by throwing such an important informant to death, the demons have changed the direction vector. Here Pet Shop offers an interesting idea. Somewhere there is a third person from Earth, and if luck smiles on them, they will be able to find him in the kingdom of demons. The dead are paid their respects before their entire squad to the church, where they find carriages with horses. At some point, the prince begins to speak Korean, which means that the conversation has taken a much more serious tone. He tells about a way to kill a warrior. If the elder violates at least one of his main qualities, he will be punished and weakened, which makes him an easy target. But the conversation is interrupted by the Holy Virgin leaning out of the carriage window, which is why the conflict between her and the prince reignites. It's time to switch places. As soon as Kim is inside the carriage with the warrior, he decides to ask one emotive question. How exactly did the bodyguard get to know his brother? But as soon as he was voiced, the eldest son grabs his chest. The commandment to be impartial to people was violated. During the conversation, the phrase "reward for destruction" slips through. They find themselves in the extreme citadel city of the Kingdom of Grand Canteen. The squad stops at a hotel bar, deciding to spend the night there. Kim is left alone with the prince, so she decides to talk about what information he received. Holy Radiance, the goddess, is a revelation that helps to defeat the Demon King, and if it can be done, then she will fulfill the wish of everyone who has contributed to this. The drinking continues, but at some point the prince becomes so ill that he vomits the contents of his stomach and his veins swell, like everyone in the tavern except Kim. At that time, the warrior was helping some citizen to carry barrels, but they tell him that he is just a royal brat. The man's face has the same swollen veins. He is surrounded from all sides. People tell him about the general of the 7th Army, Firoz the Glutton Lord, who controls them. The water was infected with parasites, and if a warrior wants to get to the demon, then he will have to kill innocent people, breaking the commandment. The blonde is thinking of climbing onto the roof, but unfortunately, there his gaze collides with familiar faces, the Holy Virgin, Edward and Sir Kim. But the knight is immune, so he quickly copes with his comrades. Firoz expects that a knight like Kim will still not be able to destroy the commandment and cause any harm. But the brown-haired man cuts everyone indiscriminately. The demon, being scared, asks him to stop, but the pet shop is not going to. He actively pushes further, realizing that the more people there are, the closer the enemy is. The general was sitting on the roof, but noticing the madman's gaze, he immediately rushes to run. But before falling by the collar of the hood, Kim managed to catch him. Firoz is already begging the monster not to approach him, but it's useless. The general of the 7th Army accepts his fate by jumping into his mouth. The knight swallows the parasite. The guy is interested in trying out his new abilities. He bites off his thumb and spits out to the side before some kind of organism with an eye begins to grow from the phalanx. Kim can control it, but the size and time are limited. Meanwhile, we are being transported to the demon castle. A pack of unknown people are discussing who to send next, because only Anger and the king of the four sides remain. The demon, who sits at the head, offers to leave Anger on the army of people, but then he has already disappeared. The pet shop and the warrior are in the carriage together again. The latter is gnawing at his conscience because of the death of innocent people, so he decides to start a conversation that does not particularly please him. The warrior leans out of the carriage window as the latter stops before noticing the prince's shocked look. A few hundred meters in front of them stands a huge ankylosaurus with 6 eyes. Draco's the Wraithlord, who came to avenge Firoz. Anger is coming. His huge paw rises and hits the ground next to the carriage. The Holy Virgin calls everyone to move just in time, But then anger raises its huge tail club and twitches so that the carriage shatters into splinters. The tail demolished the entire nearest diameter of the forest under the very stumps, and our heroes miraculously survived. The Ankylosaurus swings its tail again, but the squad manages to evade the subsequent blow. The warrior, the prince, and the Holy Virgin cannot decide who to send first to attack, and a second later, the three of them turn to the silent pet shop, who says that there is a way out. The warrior rushes into a counterattack. From the first attack of the demon, the elder successfully dodges, standing in front of the monster. But he clearly did not expect that the anger would decide to jump up and hit the tail right next to him, throwing the warrior aside with a shockwave. Dracos taunts him until the blonde shouts that he didn't think the plan would work so well. We are told a plan. While the warrior will distract the demon, he will be able to get to the scar on the belly of the beast from under the ground. And surprisingly, the elder agrees, explaining that he has the ability to lie detection. The knight notices to himself that these abilities have absolutely no effect on him here. Returning to the present, when the warrior shouts about the plan, Kim bursts out of the ground, stretching out his hand towards the scar. Pet Shop uses the muscles of a troll, the body of a mole, and the claws of a dragon to get to the monster, and subsequently tear it apart. After that, it uses the parasite's ability to obtain information. Being already inside the creature, he notices something that still needs to be reached. The guy breaks the layers of flesh and approaches his goal, which he instantly absorbs. The monster becomes defenseless, falls to the ground, and dies. The main character carelessly climbs out of the monster, surprising the warrior, the prince, and the Holy Virgin. All four continue on their way. Kim notices that the atmosphere is somehow different from the usual one, and is interested in the reason for this from his comrades. The prince explains that the current image of the knight is a bit shocking. Mentally, Kim analyzes the value of the dinosaur eaten earlier. First of all, he received lungs with which he can not only absorb a lot of air, but also exhale, which means that now he will be able to spew even more powerful dragon flame. The second is the circulatory system. Because of its peculiarities, even if the heart stops, the blood circulation will not stop. The most important thing was it, after absorbing which he can fly. Meanwhile, there is an active discussion of what is happening in the Demon Kingdom. The current situation is going according to their plan, because the warrior is going to attack the palace of the Demon King. Since people have a warrior, the strongest being under the protection of the goddess, they will definitely not give up. The demons have to either destroy humanity or capitulate, so before the warrior kills the Demon King, they are not going to give in. After the conversation, the demons pay homage to their king from another world. Meanwhile, the companions move on, encountering demon soldiers on the way. All four react quickly and get rid of them. Then Kim accidentally notices a map of the Demon Kingdom lying on one of the attacking soldiers. They look at the map, and the prince points out that all the roads lead to the same main one and gather at a certain place, and all the paths to the battle points also point there. The Holy Virgin suggests the designation of directions for supplying the army with weapons. The prince notices a village, also connected to the main road, which may be an important object for the Demon King. Next, the warrior offers to visit this place. A week later, they arrived at the village, having made sure that their assumption was correct. They really produce weapons here. The warrior is confused by the fact that they will have to kill innocent residents, but the prince proves the opposite by the fact that these are not innocent residents, but gunsmiths, since everyone is involved in production. While the brothers are arguing about what is a crime and what is the right thing to do, Kim does not waste time and goes first. He notices that he is the only one doing the work, since the others are completely useless. The warrior does not fight with those who do not attack him. The Holy Virgin was seized with panic because of the killing of demons, and the prince was engaged in her consolation. After studying the weapon, Kim and Edward find out that the third is on the side of the Demon King. The prince explains to the warrior how the Demon Kingdom plans to turn citizens into soldiers by teaching them how to use the weapons they created. The heir praises Kim and rewards him with rest, giving him the opportunity to eat enough, while marking the right places on the map. Further events unfold in the port city of the Demon Kingdom Stockbit. A descendant of man and demon, Miden, appears before us. He works as a loader at the port, carrying bags of gunpowder and boxes of coal. Barely makes ends meet, dreaming of becoming one of the 7 demonic generals. His younger sister Myrn is waiting for him at home. The main character talks about the triune brain. He believes that this organ was in some large dinosaurs. Due to the huge size, the transmission of nerve impulses takes a long time, so some scientists assume that they have an additional brain in the pelvic region, which helps in movement. This is the triune brain that Kim managed to find, and thanks to which it is now possible to fly. Now the main character is even closer to the goal of becoming the strongest. Assuming the form of a dragon, he flies to Stockbit, starting to absorb the inhabitants around. Midden at this time tries to run to save his sister, but does not have time. He is eaten by a pet shop. On the map that Edward showed, the places of production and storage of weapons were marked, apparently in order to weaken the army of the Demon King. Thanks to this, Kim managed to eat many different creatures. After 9 hours of destruction in the city of Stockbit, the demons are once again discussing what is happening. According to rumors, it was done by a dragon. It turned out that he had spewed flames at least 50 times, which only the legendary Dragon Lord, who is here in the discussion hall, can do. In one night, the dragon from Stockbit became an object of fear. If 7 demonic generals killed him, it would raise morale in the country. The Dragon Lord decides to go to prove that he is different from that dragon from Stockbit. The attack on the port city turned out to be the most profitable event since joining the warrior group. Pet Shop absorbed marine life, representatives of the insect class, hybrid species. He was able to appropriate their abilities and better understand his own, which means that he will crush other living beings. The Dragon Lord is looking for Kim, simultaneously finding the murdered inhabitants of the city. She stumbles upon him eating corpses and notices one oddity: it's not just a red dragon, as stated in the report. The girl uses the dragon's tongue skill, but it does not work. After that, Kim advises her to get rid of the thoughts that her authority and status will somehow affect him, and warns her not to use her skills anymore, because she will have to pay for it. The Dragon Lord attacks Kim. 10 minutes later, Pet Shop evades her attacks and still holds on. She had never met such tenacious dragons. He, in turn, continues to experiment on his body, allowing the enemy to tear off and eat the shoulder, which regenerates at the same moment. Kim openly says that he will spare her since she helped in the experiment, and gives the opportunity to leave, which makes the Dragon Lord even angrier. As soon as she was about to use another ability, the main character had already activated his own. The flesh that she absorbed transformed into parasites and devoured the body from the inside, as a result of which she was overtaken by death. The author tells us more about the warrior. He is a traveler who came from the future, which will come in 10 years. When demons and humans unite to fight the monster, it will consume everyone: the Demon King, the generals of the 7th Army, and the King of the 4 Sides. And the warrior will die by his hand. The warrior, returning to the past, went to the Great Forest, changed events and saved lives. But now the future of the current world is unclear for him. 30 minutes earlier, on the path of the Holy Virgin, the prince and the warrior meets the general of the 7th Army, Venancio the Grid Lord, nicknamed Greed. He points to his city of Grand Vagos and suggests stopping the killings and solving the problem peacefully, namely, to determine the winner by playing a game. The warrior accepts the offer. Everyone moves to the game room. Then Venancio announces to the public about an incredible event: the confrontation of brave warriors and the general of the 7th Army. Edward is called to be the first and becomes a participant. The conditions are as follows: they will play poker. If the prince wins, they will be able to cross this city, and if they lose, the general of the 7th Army will take their souls. Edward loses, accusing his opponent of cheating, and Greed takes his soul. The Holy Virgin offers to play dice, puts her soul in exchange for the prince's soul, and also loses. The warrior is left alone in a desperate situation, trying to decide what to do next, because he has never gambled before. But then Kim returns. The public and Greed mock him, saying that he decided to dig his own grave. Meanwhile, the guy studies the situation. The general declares that violence against him does not work, because of his unique ability Absolute Peace, blocking any attacks. Greed tells about what happened earlier. The Holy Virgin and the prince lost, and now their souls belong to him. In order to get them back, Kim needs to beat him by putting his soul on the line. He puts the warrior's soul in his own without hesitation, explaining to the warrior that in order to return 2 souls, you also need to put 2. Kim offers to play rock, paper, scissors. Subsequently, the general gets punched in the face. The main character is not affected by skills that extend to those who are nearby. Venancio couldn't understand the feelings he was experiencing for the first time. Feeling the physical pain, he considered that the absolute world had ceased to act, and had already begun to admit defeat. Therefore, his second skill, strict compliance, worked as it should. The prince and the Holy Virgin are returning souls. Kim offers to have another fight. He's betting the general's life, and Greed is all he has left. After that, the guy kills Venancio. The audience is panicking. The audience rushes to run. Kim warns that none of them will leave there alive. The warrior dissuades him, claiming that they do not need extra sacrifices. The main character confronts the warrior with the fact, explaining that the public also enjoyed the spectacle of the removal of souls. The punishment of such is justice. The warrior still rejects this idea. Kim points a sword at him and asks what he will do if the question arises before him to act mercifully or correctly. Next, the knight calls on the warrior to bring out the Holy Virgin and the prince, since he is not going to help, and declares that you will not get help from someone who does not even know what he wants. The main character, having beaten greed, appropriated his skills, and at the same time a huge amount of information. As it turned out, Venancio personally managed the casino, and this place is his fortress. He controlled the mechanisms of the building at will, and since Kim has taken over his skills, this weapon also belongs to him. He closed all the exits and turned off the firefighting equipment, filled the space with oxygen and added some fire. The building was instantly filled with fire. We are transported back to the Demon Kingdom. Lust voices to the king that the connection with laziness has been lost. The Grand Vagos, which is under the protection of greed, has been destroyed, and its location is unknown. The king is very saddened by the current situation. Meanwhile, Envy claims that the plan is still working even in the absence of the King of the Four Sides, and there is no need to be so sad. After which the king is removed. According to Lust, the king's plan is fulfilled so much that even their deaths will not change anything. Envy, on the other hand, believes that it is necessary to buy a little more time and leaves to fulfill this goal. Back to Kim. He talks about how risky it turned out to be to set an arson, because the troll's regeneration is weakened by fire. Despite the fact that he covered himself with the scales of a demon and the slime of a lizardman, if you set fire to the regenerating part of the body, you can get huge damage. Thinking about it, he realizes how recklessly he fought against that dragon, because if it had doused him with flames while he was repairing his shoulder, it would have been hard. Suddenly, an unknown lizard-like creature crawls out of the wreckage, which managed to withstand the dragon's flames. Kim is surprised by this phenomenon, so he catches and eats the find. Now he goes along with the prince. Edward asks why Kim is so cheerful, to which the answer follows that the guy was able to overcome the fire. The salamander is an amazing creature with immunity even to dragon flame. The lizard he ate turned out to be a salamander. It secretes fire-resistant mucus not from the epidermis, but from the cells of the whole body. The prince reacts ambiguously to what he has heard. This leads to a misunderstanding of what is happening in Kim. As a result, Edward makes a comparison with his interlocutor's bear, which looks like his fear of his partner. Kim claims that even though the bear is ferocious, a person will immediately calm down after learning that he turned out to be useful to him. And he claims that he did so that the warrior once again discarded justice. Edward cannot but rejoice at this, because it remains to do this again and the warrior will be able to kill. Then everyone continues on their way. Edward and Kim continue their conversation about the warrior, speaking in Japanese so that the others can't understand. Kim wonders why the prince wants to kill the warrior so badly. To this, Edward replies that it was originally the king's idea, but he was afraid to incur the wrath of the goddess, and he managed to start implementing it. And if the warrior dies, the king will experience much more bitterness than he does. The expanses of Flatfield. They managed to get to the demon citadel. Kim and Edward were confused by the fact that she was standing in the middle of the field, without any protection. Besides, there was not a soul around. Unexpectedly for everyone, the horse stopped and did not take another step further. The prince tried to calm her down and feed her, but she did not open her mouth. Virgo thought that she was ill and tried to treat her, but to no avail. Kim's attempts to scare her were futile, as was Brother Edward's belligerent speech. Suddenly the horse started running away. They were surrounded by a dark veil, from which one of the demons came out, namely Envy. He said that the warrior's companions are too slow and inattentive, and the ability to detect outsiders is worse than that of ancient predators. Besides, it is not clear how they got here alive. His name is Richmond Duanvillord, nicknamed Envy, one of the highest officials of the Demon Kingdom. Its service life is 200 years. He accompanied 3 kings and twice fought with warriors, and half of his service directed the internal and external affairs of the state, serving the king himself. Even a demon, whose lifespan is twice that of a human, is not capable of such a thing. He's a Lick, the ultimate undead, whose life and power are sealed in a vessel. Only by breaking it, you can kill her. With each death he becomes stronger, his arrogance grows. The officers of the demonic citadel and even the king himself could not ignore him until this happened. The previous warrior was heading to the demon's stronghold, and Richmond wanted to stop him by raising numerous undead from the ground. But the light of the warrior blew them to smithereens, and then he himself was defeated. When his life returned from the vessel, the warrior had already killed the demon king, and no matter how high he stood, his honor was trampled. He was mocked. A man would use brute force to close other people's mouths and amuse his pride. But Envy was not like that. He did not blame anyone and, like a researcher, began to analyze the reason for his defeat. And the main reason for this was the magic of light. The undead army was helpless in front of her. From that moment on, he developed immunity in himself and his army. The result was sacred magic. The anger and hatred exuded by the undead are the consequences of envy, but Richmond overcame it by filling himself with faith. He is the true ruler of envy. The Holy Virgin does not believe in this, since the very existence of the undead violates the natural order established by the Church. The undead cannot gain faith. They have a long discussion. Envy is interrupted and orders his undead to kill the Virgin and her companions. Virgo uses the sacred barrier, but it does not work on the enemy. The prince uses his abilities and kills several creatures. All this time Kim was resting on the carriage, but then he was disturbed. He had to go fight too. The warrior warns the knight that sacred magic is powerless here, after which Kim tears one of the undead to pieces, giving the first prince a fighting spirit and awareness that in order to win, you need to wield the sword harder. Kim is pleased that the case has begun to gain momentum, but on top of everything else, it will take a long time, because there are too many undead. Watching this, Envy scoffs, claiming that no matter how much they break, they will not make up even a small fraction of the number of all the undead, and soon they themselves will join their ranks. Kim, without wasting time, transforms into a dragon. This surprises the warrior and the Holy Virgin, but not the second prince. Now they, having climbed the dragon, are heading straight to the citadel of demons. The warrior wonders who Kim is, but the prince does not reveal his identity. Edward says only that he has a very unusual background, and he is so dangerous that the whole world can become his enemy. The warrior assumes that Kim is a werewolf, because transformation of a werewolf is a skill inherent in twin demons. Then he either betrayed the demons or a half-breed. The warrior gets the idea that this guy is a monster of destruction, but he quickly rejects it. Thanks to Kim, they cover a fairly long distance in just half an hour and fly up to the citadel of the Demon King, noticing that the undead, following them, are approaching. It would take her about 2 hours to catch up with them. The warrior turns to Kim with a request to buy time. He, in turn, uses fuel and fire, preventing the undead from entering the citadel. Undead have 3 weaknesses: sacred magic, sunlight, and bodies that decompose over time. They eliminated the first with the help of faith. The second can be eliminated by fighting after sunset. Removing moisture from the body, decomposition was prevented, but now they are like dry firewood that can easily catch fire. A weak fire can be stopped by magic, but the dragon's flame is too powerful. Richmond decides to leave the protection of the King of Lust, and to do everything in his power, namely, to kill this dragon. Lust appears before the warrior, the Holy Virgin, and the prince. Julius de Rostrode, a male demon with an exceptionally muscular body, and his kind belongs to the incubi. Incubi are magical demons of the middle class, seducing women and pulling the life force out of them. Being skilled in magic, they don't need a strong body. Initially, all the beautiful girls and boys in the tribe believed that strong, pumped muscles were ugliness, and Julius thought the same way. But he became so big and mature, made the power of his own body his weapon. The reason for this lies in the memories of separation and loss that happened to him 10 years ago. The warrior attacks the demon while he is being given memories, and instantly kills him. Next, all 3 meet the Demon King. Meanwhile, Kim attacks the undead using the same method of fuel and fire, destroying the Richmond reliquary, thereby killing everyone. Thus, out of the 7 demonic generals, 0 remained. After that, Kim goes to the castle. As soon as he finds his allies together with the king, who has the appearance of a little girl, a dispute between a warrior and a prince unfolds in front of him. Edward says that the king should be killed, as originally planned, but the warrior opposes this idea, arguing that she has ceased to be a king, since her soul is not from this world, even if it is enclosed in the body of a demon. Kim does not believe him, to which the warrior claims that his ability to recognize lies confirmed this. Kim reflects, if she is the 3rd person from Earth, then the warrior's words are true. Edward was reborn in this world after his death. He is reborn or resurrected. Kim was transported to the continent of Elmud in his body, and he can be called the Old Man. Then the Demon King is a transferred soul, since the soul of a person moved to this world and became a king. Being an ordinary office worker, she preferred novels and stories about wars to communicating with people. However, being reborn as a Demon King did not come as a blow to her, because this was often found in the novels she read. Therefore, she used the skills and knowledge acquired on Earth and applied them in this world. As a result, the military power of the demon army increased, and the balance was also disturbed, because of which the goddess sent the warrior. But she didn't do anything, because she knew that the demon king would definitely meet with the warrior, like the main character of the novel. But she was not. The subordinates in whom she believed so much died before they had time to use their powers. And when Julius fell, she realized reality and felt real fear. Now she can only ask for mercy, and therefore she expressed everything to the warrior. Kim declares that he still does not believe in what was said. The warrior continues to defend the king and admits that he wants to stop the series of murders, because too many lives have already been taken. At the same moment, Edward plunges his sword into the warrior, and the king standing behind him. A warrior must be impeccable, fair and kind. The hero is obliged to overcome the moral dilemma and make the most correct decision. So he did, until the hatred of the prince and Kim trampled him. In a village where weapons were manufactured, a warrior participated in a fight against residents who could not resist. It was the right decision, but not a merciful one. He did not execute the demon in the casino, but used his powers to save his comrades. It was a kind decision, but not a fair one. And finally, he renounced his original mission and tried to protect the demon king, which deprived him of the last quality, perfection. The warrior has renounced the 3 covenants, and from now on he is no longer a warrior. Edward kills the warrior, saying he had no choice. The Holy Virgin was shocked by what was happening and rushed to the warrior to cure him. Kim does not allow her to accomplish her plan and eats her alive. A few days earlier, the prince talks to Kim that before getting rid of the warrior, you need to deal with the Holy Virgin, since she is a healer. If the warrior loses his rank, he will become the first prince, and the plan will go down the drain. Moreover, the healing abilities of the Virgin are amazing. They say that the Virgin of the previous generation could bring herself back to life from minced meat. This healing skill is called Miracle. Then, to get rid of the Virgin, you can't leave a piece of her. Therefore, it was decided to absorb it. Now a goddess appears before Edward and Kim. The goddess is a complex system responsible for the creation and maintenance of the world. Her duties include the management of skills and status, the creation of monsters, and the reincarnation of souls. Kim asks about how he got into this world. She replies that their world and the world of people border on each other, so sometimes people are brought here because of a system failure. He asks the following question about why the local monsters look like animals from fairy tales and biological objects from his world. The goddess says that when they were created, they were taken into account from their universe. Then the question followed, is it not a problem that the warrior was killed? The answer was no. Kim concludes that he is here because he fulfilled the conditions on the battlefield with demons. The goddess confirms this. The guy reports that they also killed the Holy Virgin. The goddess reacts emotionlessly, causing Kim to be embarrassed. She explained this by saying that she is just a system, and therefore does not feel feelings. But if she had her own opinion, she would say that he is well done. Initially, the hero system was intended to allow humans and demons to compete and develop society without destroying each other unilaterally. But the result was the opposite. After the introduction of the hero system, humanity and demons continued to coexist without much change. But thanks to recent events, they can get rid of the hero system, and now they will not be from either humans or demons. Kim wonders if it is possible to bring him back to Earth, but the goddess claims that this is impossible because his existence has already had a huge impact on the world. This is contrary to the rules. The guy asks about the existence of living beings who are able to go beyond the laws of physics only because of their physical structure, and which cannot be approached using conventional methods. As a result, information about them enters his head. They are still under development, as they do not fit into the cultural and technical norms of this world. However, it is possible to reproduce one of them using desire. Kim refuses the desire for now, returning back. After a while, the prince also returns from the goddess and says that he has made a wish for valuable knowledge for the future, and among them there is information about how to bring Kim back to Earth, which Edward will inform on the way. The Demon King's plan that the King of the Four Sides was talking about was to reorganize the army. As a result of large-scale reforms, the combat capability of the Demon King's army has increased dramatically, so much so that it began to threaten humanity with complete disappearance. Meanwhile, in Santo Canargo, one of the subordinates informs the king about how the second prince dealt with the army of demons, sitting on a dragon, which subsequently incinerated everyone to ashes. The king doubts this, but then still believes what he said. He is interested in the question of how the warrior and the Holy Virgin died, and assumes that they found their death not at the hands of the Demon King, but at the hands of the prince. After all, in his place he would have done the same. The plan to return the status of the first prince to the warrior failed. The king is not at all surprised by the possibility that the prince was involved in this. He is more concerned about why then Edward did not suffer heavenly punishment. Royalty is the price of loyalty and devotion to the goddess. Killing one of the family members is an obscene sin, but there is no hint of heavenly punishment. The king listened to the prophecy of the priest, who stated that this man made a greater contribution than any other of the heroes. He concludes that he should still admit that the prince has changed and all the rumors about him are true, and he himself should start changing. The prince who appeared so spectacularly did not return to Santo Canargo. Instead of returning to the safe lands of the kingdom, he was getting rid of the remaining demons in the kingdom of Grand Cantine. The way he sat on a huge dragon left an indelible impression in the minds of people. Even the aristocrats who initially opposed him began to admire him. After some time in Santo Canargo, the prince returns with the knight, and the inhabitants welcome them cordially. Everyone in town is busy preparing for an audience. Already during the meeting of the prince and the king, the prince informs that he has learned a lesson from his long journey. Namely, he understands what a sacrifice the king made in the name of the common people, and how heavy the royal burden can be. Suddenly, Edward declares that he now knows what to do next, takes up his sword and says that the king will no longer have to suffer for the sake of his people and bear the burden of this crown. He will take care of everything. The prince is surrounded by guards, but he uses the sword of light and gets rid of them. The king foresaw such an outcome. Therefore, he prepared a detachment of mercenaries. They didn't react because Kim used his abilities and brainwashed them. Edward went to the king, accusing him of murdering his mother, that he had assigned mercenaries to him and exiled Angela to a monastery. The prince plunges his sword into the king, killing him. Edward becomes the new king and puts on the crown, after which the hall is filled with applause. As a wish, Edward asked the goddess to reward him with true wisdom. Thanks to this, he was able to give the right instructions to Kim and find out what his brother wanted to say before his death, namely, don't cross the line. Then he thinks that he must repay Kim, because he was able to go so far only thanks to his strength, and bring him back to Earth. The main character makes notes in the book, and Edward is interested in them. Kim explains that he is going to return to Earth, kill his former partners and live under a different name. He decided to take up writing and sell books to earn money for a living. And since Kim lives in a fantasy world and eats everything, the book is called that for gourmets. Edward speaks out against this title, since the book will not be sold, and suggests coming up with something more interesting. For example, devouring, getting stronger. Kim replies that the title does not matter. He will still be looking for a screenwriter, because writing books is absolutely not his. He says, since this is an autobiography and the action takes place in another world, then millions of copies are provided. They begin discussing Kim's plan to return to Earth. To accomplish this, the heads of the 4 kings, elves, dwarves, beasts, and lizardmen should be placed on the altar sealed in the cathedral. These conditions can be fulfilled only by centralizing power and uniting with other states for a subsequent frontal attack. Edward gives a stack of papers to Kim, which contains a lot of necessary information about the enemies and creatures living here, as well as a treasure map. Kim's new task is to destroy all the enemies from this large list. Next, Edward appoints him the Royal Secret Auditor. This title he himself has just invented, so it was with the title of Knight Bodyguard. He explains that the main difference between an auditor and a knight bodyguard is the ability to move freely and stay on the side of the king. That is, he gives freedom to Kim. After that, he asks his partner to try to return next year around the same time, since he will have a coronation ceremony. If he doesn't come, rumors may spread that the heroes who killed the Demon King have soured relations. After which Kim leaves, we are told about a certain killer head. He is the head of the Royal Assassins organization, directly subordinate to the government. Edward runs this organization. Initially, the king was going to give it to Edward. The first crown prince was to ascend to the throne and illuminate his subjects with his light. And the second is to become the head of an organization of assassins and act from the shadows, eliminating enemies in his path. But everything changed when the goddess proclaimed the first prince a warrior. The king's plan was only half implemented. Edward could lead the royal, having fulfilled one condition: to take possession of the relics of the king, a ring with the coat of arms of the organization and a crown. Thus, one of the 2 armed organizations with access to the royal palace was under the complete control of the prince. The second organization, the Royal Guard, obediently obeyed orders because it was infected with parasites. But if Kim leaves the kingdom, the parasites will cease to act, so Edward must force them to join his side. Kim decides that the armor presented by his partner is not suitable for the movements of the secret inspector, so they made him a new one. Because of the constant persecution on Earth, Kim had few hobbies. Therefore, reading was the best choice because you don't need to contact people that way. Unfortunately, in this world, the culture of reading and writing is poorly developed. Therefore, only aristocrats have books, but they are boring. He may not be destined to find a good book, but there is a chance to hear an interesting story. Santo Fevro. Felina Greensmith is a wandering bard. She goes into an inn where a small detachment of mercenaries is drinking, and the wanderer Kim is sitting. And in the corner there is a man pretending to be a drunk. Felina decides to sing about the prince who killed the Demon King and the Dragon Summoner Knight. Suddenly, during the performance, Kim laughed. One of the mercenaries got angry and attacked him. The guy coped with the attacker and his partners, who rushed to help. Suddenly, a girl intervened in the fight. She introduced herself as the Holy Prince Fuicrid and said that she would not allow force to be used against those who are weaker. As it turned out, she is a paladin. Paladins are one of the asymmetric forces of the church, that is, a force that creates a significant imbalance in comparison with all the others. Either he is much superior to others in power, or he uses radically different strategies and tactics. It doesn't look like it, but she's from a state founded by the Church of the Goddess. The church-state is a place created on the model of the Vatican from Earth. It is a small city-state, mostly inhabited by superhumans superior to the average person. The church-state invented a way to create superhumans. They became the very paladins. A paladin, as well as a saint, is a modernized person created with the help of magic and blessings. If the saint is like the newest tank model, then the paladin can be called an old-style conveyor tank. But even so, in a battle with a tank, a person cannot resist. After the warning, Kim stops the fight, since such an early conflict with the church-state will not end well. Then he hints that he recognized her as the man pretending to be drunk. She is embarrassed and leaves. And Kim, in turn, moves forward to the meeting. Fevro County is one of the few possessions that has suffered almost no losses from the invasion of the demon army, because it was not a strategically important object. After the war, these lands were transformed. Refugees from nearby lands flocked here, supplying the county with labor. The mercenaries who survived the war also gathered. Due to the increased demand, the number of eateries and inns increased, which contributed to the growth of the economy. The citizens of Fevro became the basis of the middle stratum, and mercenaries rose above all of them, solving all problems with money and brute force. The prince's deputy royal assassin tells Kim the current situation in the county. They agree to take decisive action in 30 minutes. Kim goes out on one of the streets and meets people from the Fire Squall mercenary group looking for someone shouting very loudly. He pretends to be a local resident and tries to drive the strangers away. As a result, he is attacked. Everything is going according to the plan of Kim and the deputy prince. The residents are turning against the mercenaries and are expelled from Santo Fevro. Edward, being still only the crown prince, gave an assessment to Count Fevro. He said that for several decades of rule, he had only aged, so he should be eliminated first. And indeed, only the center of the county of Santo Fevro was developing rapidly. The nearby points were still poor villages. Without the protection of an army and a fortress wall, they looked more like the hunting grounds of wild animals and monsters. Kim went to this place. It was a wonderful place for him. During the day he furred rivers, forests, lakes and caught monsters in them, and at night he sold trophies from the eaten monsters to the guilds of travelers. And with this money he listened to the songs of wandering bards in taverns. So 2 weeks of his life flew by. The hunting process was necessary because he had previously gained too many abilities in a short period of time and could not know for sure what he was capable of and what he was not. Therefore, for 2 weeks he wandered around the mountains and tested his abilities. And today, after the skirmish in the tavern, he appeared at a predetermined place, and he arranged that scene with an attack on a local resident. A little later, Edward reads this news and declares that additional points should be added to the law, even in the case of direct inheritance of the title of Lord. If the Archbishop of the Church of the Goddess and the King decide that the Lord does not meet the requirements, he may lose the rights to inherit lands, and the number of mercenaries who are allowed to stay on the lands for longer than a month should be half as many as the armies on the ground. We return to Kim, who is talking to the prince's deputy, who declares the fulfillment of his task. He still has not fulfilled the decree to find out where Kim is going next, and takes this opportunity, to which he receives an answer, Cabalage, after which he leaves Kim. Cabalage is a territory where the griffin has recently begun to be noticed. This information was on the treasure map. Most of all, Kim likes creatures that combine the characteristics of several creatures, so he decided to go there. He heard a sound behind him, and as soon as he turned around, the paladin girl was already standing in front of him. Griffin, a monster of the highest level. on average 2-3 meters in size, with the head and front paws of an eagle. He has a lion's body and hind legs. Looking at this guy, you can feel how amazing this world is. His upper and lower half of his body does not ooze at all. Because of the lower half, he has to fly half sitting. And because of the upper half, he cannot walk freely on the ground, moving in small steps, a creature stuck in the middle between the air and the surface. But even such imperfect ones drive people into fear and horror. That's why they were called kings of heaven and awarded the highest rank. After all, even despite all the shortcomings, griffins have incredible power. They have adapted to fly and lead a predatory lifestyle, also gather in small flocks inherent in lions. Their most favorite snack is horses, which is why griffins often attack people. A lot of people pass through cabbage, so the main character took up an assignment from the guild to eliminate the threat of griffins. Since they gather in packs, a head-on attack won't work here. Therefore, their goal is to catch the leader and reduce their activity. At this very moment, his reasoning is interrupted by the cry of a student who admires the main character, and he asks enthusiastically if he meant that they would have to face deadly dangers if peace and tranquility of the people depended on it. To which he irritably agrees with everything said. Somehow it so happened that a paladin of the church state clung to him. We are shown a flashback that happened a couple of days ago. There was a blizzard in Santo Fevro. The Lord asks the attacker if he knows who he is dealing with, to which the mercenary kills him without hesitation and confirms the completion of the task. Leaving the palace, he was noticed by the same paladin girl and she decides to follow him. The mercenary approaches the main character, and a blonde looks out from behind a bush. She remembers yesterday's despot from the tavern. The mercenary wishes a pleasant journey to the Night Kim and dissolves in the air. The girl is insane, because he has just been named Night Kim. The main character wanted to continue on his way, as the girl runs up to him and addresses him by name. Without hesitation, Kim was going to destroy all the witnesses, but she admires him, calling the hero a brave man, the best of knights and a living legend. He thinks to solve everything quietly, so he shows his order and says that he is on a secret mission and asks to keep everything he saw a secret. What she asks to take her as an apprentice, there was nothing to be done, so he agreed. Paladins are an asymmetric force of the church state, and unlike the saint, each paladin is tracked using magic to minimize army losses. Moreover, in case of murder, magic puts an automatic mark on the killer. Simply put, destroying one witness will get the whole church state and the persecutors. As a result, there was no choice. He was going to exhaust her with difficult tasks so that she would escape by herself. But she is absurdly executive and broke through the cave with her bare hands without a single sound in order to continue traveling with the legendary hero. Kim lets out the idea that griffins return to their nests only with prey, so it will be easier to ambush them than to follow on their heels. Also, the hero mentally underestimates the power of paladins, since they can destroy such a cave with their fists alone. The girl calls Kim, as the griffins have returned with the loot and they decide to attack them. The main character wants to check on the girl, which he asks to deal with them herself. The girl rushed into battle headlong. The griffin makes a capture that outrages the blonde and she grabs in response. Kim is clearly pleased with this turn, as he wanted to do everything quietly. After a while, the battered paladin comes back saying she's done. The main character with a cold look replies that he appreciated her abilities and it's a complete mess. Because of the fear that when attacking at full strength, the sword might break, she loosened her grip and therefore lost in the attack. After the attack, she always checks whether the sword is intact, which significantly reduces the ability to assess the situation. Worrying about these 2 points also reduces the speed of magic and accuracy. With tears in her eyes, the girl replies that her mentor told her the same thing, but hearing it from the person to whom she aspires is different. Kim advises to give up on the sword, as it will be much better. The girl in horror does not understand the situation and wonders if he really wants her to lose the rights of a knight. It can't be that she was so terrible. In other words, the main character wanted to say that she should take an example from him and orders not to use the sword. The blonde calmed down a little and continues to reason, because he advised to give up the sword and use his fists, and not to leave the knights. Kim tells her to follow him, because he will show her clearly how to fight. Grabbing the griffin by the neck with incredible strength, the girl can't believe her eyes. After all, I've never seen such a fighting style. There is nothing interesting about the paladin's fighting abilities. Despite wielding a sword, her skills are far from the highest degree of skill as a brave man. Even with the magic of light, she can't create the same bright flame as the prince. As an advanced person, she has outstanding physical characteristics. But, of course, they do not go to any comparison with the saint. It combines the features of the brave man's team, but none of them gives her an advantage in battle. just like a griffin, who has chosen the signs of an eagle and a lion, useful separately, but mutually interfering with each other when combined. Kim understands that an army of people cannot defeat her. But if she had participated in the brave man's campaign, she would have exhausted her strength at the beginning before she reached the fortress of the Demon King. However, he finds the reason in her training, even though he reluctantly accepted her as a student. Watching her fighting style, he decided he sincerely wanted to raise her, because Paladin Rayanhan's Ruakrid is a monster of the same type. Like him, at this moment, a little more than 100 griffins arrive. Kim decides to kill them all at once, but decides to tease by taking out a magic pouch. It is created by the blood and sweat of the great spatial magician of the Grand Continent Kingdom. Externally, it seems very small, but the interior space is quite spacious and it is designed so that the user can always get the desired thing. Kim decides to tease the griffins with a piece of horse meat, throws it to the ground and challenges the griffins. Immediately, a pack of griffins rushes at him with the aim of killing him. The main character begins to talk about martial arts. There is such a thing as imitating fist. This is a Chinese hand-to-hand combat technique imitating the manner of attack of different animals. He had been studying it for a long time while he was in China. Back then, he thought that with his ability to use the body of animals would make him stronger. In the end, even imitating animals, he still uses the human body. For him, who uses the body of animals for real, she did not become a pleasant addition. It was the most wasted time of his life. Initially, martial arts were created in order to increase the effectiveness of the force limited by the framework. But after all, he has unlimited power, so he needs only a small effort to trample the enemy into the ground. Without any fighting techniques and so on, this is his fighting style. The griffin is preparing to make an attack, as at this time Kim changes his hand and catches the griffin's beak. He uses his technique for the first time on a large animal. Of all the creatures that Kim ate, there was a demonic beast close to the penis legs. After absorbing it, he was able to synchronize with the mantis forelimbs. That member-footed has a powerful punch capable of dealing damage 250 times its weight, a killing force that will allow you to knock down even a large animal. Kim decides to improve the abilities of other animals. For example, to use the ability of a lizard that shoots blood from its eyes and replace it with puffer blood. A frightened paladin is watching all this because he is arranging a real massacre with a brutal smile. The fight is too rough and sloppy, there is no skill or technique, only unbridled violence. A fight that is fundamentally the opposite of the paladin's fighting style, as if everything she was learning was wrong. Why do you need a martial art when you can tear apart steel with your bare hands? Or why you need to dodge when you have the ability to regenerate? Is the enemy on the defensive? Then you need to flatten it from all sides and that's it. After she comes to her senses, remembering that she is a paladin, a submissive servant of the great goddess and should not even think about such a thing. At this moment, Kim approaches her and asks if she was watching the fight carefully, to which the blonde replies yes. The hero understands that she doubts and says that it is not necessary to make a decision right now. 3 days later, they dealt with all the remaining griffins in the marked area. Already in the city of Santo Kabalovich there is a dispute in the guild, where C-rank adventurer Jack is told that they cannot cancel the request, since the merit of eliminating the griffins was given to another team. Jack, a C-rank adventurer, is introduced to us. This is his new identity card, allowing him to move freely. He is indignant, because why on earth should he refuse the merits of the extermination of griffins and asks whose decree it is. The girl at the reception desk can't reveal the secret, to which Kim replies that he understood everything. So in the Guild of Adventurers of Santo Kabalich, some guy appropriates the merits of others, and the guild employees are at one with him. Threatening her, he says that it will be funny if such rumors spread. Of course he won't do it, but it's worth a drink as the tongue is loosened. After these words, the girl becomes enraged, saying that no one dares to threaten the head of the guild. He is a very strong and influential person, but you cannot contact him, because he is a man who is equated with a hero and he does not need to get involved with some ordinary adventurer. To which Kim tells her that he wasn't even going to look for a meeting with him and grabs the girl by the hand, because he will come here himself, after which he breaks the girl's hand. Julio Aventuras, legendary adventurer, the only one who managed to reach SSS rank. He is the head of the Kabalich Guild, and one of those who accompanied the previous brave man. The detachment of the brave man 25 years ago left behind countless heroic stories, and of course successfully defeated the Demon King. They are also granted the fulfillment of one wish. He asked to be given the power that would allow him to fight on equal terms with an invincible opponent. Upon his return from the campaign, He became the head of the guild, and over 20 years of work as an adventurer acquired a high status and colossal influence. Now he is not a simple adventurer, but a symbol of freedom. All this has become possible only thanks to the power obtained through desire. And it was a political force. If an adventurer is a symbol of freedom, then whoever controls the adventurers controls freedom. However, he did not get into the squad of the current brave man. The king took action before he could intervene. As a result, the second prince became the hero, and people began to praise not the symbol of freedom, but the royal power. For this reason, he needs to create a hero among adventurers who can raise the prestige of the profession. For this reason, he attributes other people's merits to his son Jorge, to which the guy angrily shouts at his father. After all, even if he becomes a hero, what's the point? At this moment, the man replies that they do not become heroes, and he does not do this out of love for his son. His support is only an investment necessary for the birth of a hero. The future of adventurers depends on whether he becomes a hero or not. Their conversation is interrupted by a heart-rending scream. Running out, the guy sees Kim brutally cracking down on the guild workers. In a rage, the guy breaks down and attacks the main character. But everything is useless since his sword is caught with one hand and later completely broken into pieces. Grabbing the guy by the throat, Kim is about to strike him, as the head of the guild shouts not to do it. But the hero doesn't listen and kills the guy in front of him. The man furiously asks his name, to which Kim replies that his name is Jack and he is a C-rank adventurer. Having found out that it was he who defeated the Griffins, the man apologizes for trying to take away his merit. Once the head of the guild realized his mistakes, Kim simply forgives him and leaves. But the evil man stops him, saying that he destroyed the adventurers of his guild, crushed his fiance's hand, and took his son to live. Kim simply explains that it's their fault, because the girl wasn't going to call anyone. The adventurer tried to hit him and he defended himself, and his son tried to kill him, so he killed him first, and since the head apologized, he leaves. The man still does not understand who he is talking to, so he asks who sent him, because he could not deal with the Griffins alone. He is interrupted by the main character. He is not at all interested in any merits and exploits, but there is something that he cares about. If something belongs to him, then he will not allow it to be taken away. Or he should have warned the head in advance, then the case would not have taken such a bad character, and leaves. The head of the guild continued to wander. He began to realize that he had chosen a completely wrong way. His greed got him into trouble. Why did it turn out that way? Kim took away his family and his entire future, so he makes an emergency gathering of all guilds. In return, he will take away his future. The chapter begins with the paladin's reasoning. When she was training before becoming a paladin, the mentor in charge of her blamed her for something all the time. The girl is being shouted at by two unknown guys because she has already broken several swords. She has extraordinary physical abilities, but she absolutely cannot cope with them. If she were a predator, then in nature she would become a king, but this is not good for a paladin. But Kim's instructions to use the force as your heart desires are different from the teachings of the mentor. What should she choose? In the window we see a group of people approaching the hotel where the main character is staying. They are clearly looking for him. Walking along the road, Kim is blocked by the head of the guild. Kim does not understand what is the matter, because he has already accepted an apology. But the man reminds about the young man whom Kim killed half an hour ago, and says that it was his son. The hero does not know what the heart of the father of the lost son feels, but shocking the man, Kim replies that this feeling is familiar. He left many orphans, and everyone as one was talking about revenge, but Kim dealt with them all. The hero has opened up for a blow, and the head of the guild does not lose the moment and uses the aura that he has been honing for 10 years. A power that can even dissect a dragon's scales like a piece of paper. Julio Aventuras, though old, is a companion of the brave man's past and the only adventurer of SSS rank. But in response, Kim uses the arthropod's claws and tears the man apart with one blow. At the same moment, Kim notices people running, but from where? Already running past him, they shout about the monster, but she turns out to be a paladin who staged a massacre with her bare hands. Crying, she cannot believe that she has done such a thing. But when she notices the teacher, she calms down a little. Kim does not react in any way, but just sits next to him, and then takes out an object from a magic bag and begins to feast on it. It turns out to be the leg of a previously defeated griffin. The girl wipes her tracks and approaches the teacher, to which he offers her a snack. Deciding to try and bite her heartache, she realizes how terrible it tastes, and immediately spits out everything she ate. Although, as expected, the griffin meat still tastes disgusting. The paladin shares a secret. Everyone knows that the paladins received a blessing from the goddess, which endowed them with superhuman strength. but in fact, it's just a modernized person. But Kim says that this is not a secret, since it has long been known in high circles, and the prince told him about it. She also says that experiments are being put on them to check the functions that they plan to insert into the next saint. The girl shows her right hand. Perhaps these are the results of experiments. She asks for forgiveness for what she did to those people. Having met that blonde for the first time, Kim felt a sense of kinship. He never allowed the thought that his parents were living beings like him, also with a vile older brother. That's why he was careful and hid his strength. But he showed the paladin's strength without hesitation, because she is the same monster as him. Thinking, he added that they had made a fuss by killing the head of the guild and tearing an entire guild to shreds. Now you can't stay here, so Kim orders you to go ahead and get a ticket for the carriage. And he has one thing left that will take a little time, so she should go alone. She obediently listens to him and runs away. Turning to his comrade, Kim asks him to come out because he heard everything. Kim asks for payment for the information he obtained about the paladins, because the higher circles only suspected that they were experimental material, and he is the one who got this information. In the world you have to pay for everything. The guy hands him a bag of money and a new identity card plate. Jack, 26 years old, a mercenary belonging to the Almaruza group, is his new identity. Now he has become a mercenary. The guy asks where he is going to go. It will be the city of Santo Canargo. He met the prince there for the first time. He is waiting for a meeting with old friends. After a while, the main character and the paladin are already riding on a cart, and with them a pink-haired bard girl, who does not understand how it happened that she was going with them, because this adventurer is a dangerous person who has built a pogrom in the tavern. Also that crazy massacre, which he may have been involved in. And that girl next to him is a paladin who crushed people to the left and to the right without removing the grin from his face. They are the ones who caused her to cancel all her fees and immediately fled the city, to end up in the same carriage with them. As soon as she arrives in Santo Canargo, she will immediately transfer to another one. It is better not to contact them. Otherwise there will be no problems. In any case, they are almost there, just a little bit left, when suddenly a dungeon opens in front of them. We are transferred to the royal castle, namely to the Baron Canargo. He is upset by the news that the dungeon has opened and asks again if this information is accurate. But the subordinate confirms the information and says that everything in the radius of the dungeon has been eroded. Angry at the adventurers, the Baron says that they are non-entities who do not pay tax, and as soon as their help is needed, they will not lift a finger, taking care only of themselves. And all because of the abnormal Giulio adventurers. He raised the authority of trash adventurers by creating an unthinkable law that the dungeon is the property of adventurers. They're just freeloaders. The whole guild does nothing but protect the rights of scum. He asks about the request for the destruction of the underworld. But so far no one has responded to this, because it's a risky business, and adventurers only care about safe earnings. How at the same moment a subordinate bursts in and interrupts the dialogue, saying that he was asked to convey this royal sign to him under any circumstances. After a while, the Baron laughs and rejoices at the same time, because Giulio died. He praises Kim, because he is the best of the best and he is on a completely different level than anyone in this kingdom. To which the blonde corrects him, saying that the teacher is using a different name now. He now refers to him as Mercenary Jack, talking about the dungeon, because it is a living being that can be called the most mysterious form of life. Just like terrestrial nautilids, they develop underground and, eating their way up, form a labyrinth of spiral shells. Having become quite huge, the dungeon opens the entrance, attracting monsters with pheromones. Monsters trapped inside change under the influence of mana and change their appearance, becoming stronger and become a shield that protects the dungeon. When the dungeon is overflowing with monsters, they break out and attack everyone in their field of vision. However, when they exist, a person bears not only losses. Eating the earth, the dungeon steals all ore and minerals separately. Useful plants with special powers also grow there, so many adventurers themselves are looking for open dungeons. On this basis, conflicts began to arise. The lord and the inhabitants of the lands want to put an end to them as soon as possible, but the adventurers delay killing the dungeon to the last so that it accumulates more benefits. This is the current situation in Santo Canargo, so he has one assignment for Kim. Kim went to perform the same task. He was stopped and asked to show the adventurer's ID, to which he replies that he is a mercenary, but mercenaries cannot enter the dungeon. But his goal is not the dungeon, but the people standing in front of him. The guards keep up, and Kim safely enters the dungeon. Now the Baron himself will block the entrance, not allowing them to interfere. The girl admires the dungeon because she has only heard about it from stories. Now she is only interested in being in one of the pages of the heroic story of the teacher. Going a little further, the cave becomes darker. Kim decides to use the dragon's eyes to see clearly, but the blonde's eyes have also changed. The path is blocked by a lot of monsters. The Baron's task liquidation of the dungeon begins. A little earlier, the Baron asks to take care of it. The blonde asks if such actions are legal. According to territorial law, the Lord is forbidden to use mercenaries for violence. To this he replies that they are well informed. But adventurers are not citizens, just outsiders taking away privileges from the locals. Asks to act according to the plan. And yet, he temporarily appointed a paladin to serve in the garrison. The expansion of the dungeon may affect the reservoir, which will leave the population without water. Asks them to hurry up. Now we have been brought back to the present. The heroes are surrounded by monsters. Kim is clearly in the black, as he will be able to absorb the creatures that live here. He sends his student to fight first. She uses transformation, but the method is different from Kim. She does not change through the assimilation of food. If this is the result of the experience she mentioned, then there is a high probability of surgical transplantation. The paladin takes off and attacks the monsters by punching the body of one of them with his horns.